So please just let me know when, as soon as you can see my screen.
We can now. It's open.
Oh, okay. Thanks for that. All right. So good morning once again, everybody, and thanks a lot for obliging my request to have the class at this time, this early hours. It's really appreciated. So in the last class, we had a particular activity that we didn't complete. We remember that we were looking at data preparation still, data transformation with Power Query, which is the very first stage when it comes to whatever thing we want to do in Power BI. We need to ensure first that we have dealt with whatever transformation stage or whatever transformation our data would require based on what we have seen from the issues that we have identified using the rules for data management. There was a particular activity that we didn't complete on yesterday, which is the last one on our file at column. So I would want us to quickly wrap up on that before we go into what's next after this. So as discussing this with us, please, I would want every one of us, let's launch our Power BI file very quickly. So let's launch our Power BI file and let's connect to that last worksheet there, the add columns worksheet. So I would be doing the same. And so while we do that, this is the case. Remember that the last example we looked at yesterday was, we looked at split and merge, wherein we had a sort of a customer name like this, which is the full name of the customer, and we needed to split it into different columns. So we have first name on a column, we have last name on a column. And if the reverse was the situation we had, such that we had two different columns, the first name and the last name, and we needed to merge, there was that possibility also in Power Query, which we saw yesterday. A couple of other scenarios might arise. Assuming that now we have a column called unit price, we have the quantity, we have the discount, and we have the profit. I want us to look at these four columns. If we want to know what the total transaction amount is for each of these transactions, how do we think we can calculate that from the available columns that we have? How can we calculate that? We want to know what the total transaction amount is. Anyone has an idea? Want to know what the total transaction amount is for each of these transactions here. And we have the unit price, we have the quantities bought, we have the discount, and we have the profit. How can we go about that? Anyone wants to try?
Excuse me, Mr. Musin, are you talking about the row or the column?
No, the columns now. So if I want to have a column here, I want to have an extra column here that says maybe something like transaction amounts. And then this column will be derived from what we already have. So what do we think we would combine to get what the transaction amount is for this particular transaction here? So we have the unit price. This is somebody that went into a store. This is the unit price, and this is the quantity that the person bought. So how much did the person pay eventually? How much?
Unit price times the quantity.
Excellent. Unit price times the quantity. Perfect. So now, if we want have a situation like that, wherein we would need to derive some other columns by some calculations or some logics that we would be applying to what we already have on our data, then we would be adding extra columns into our data. So let's see some scenarios very quickly. That is a very quick one, a quick scenario like that. Another scenario might be that from our date, we want to extract some things from our date. We have a date column here. We want to extract what the month is. We want to extract the year for this transaction. We want to extract the day and some other things like that. Excuse me. How do we go on to do some of these operations in Power Query? So let's see those very quickly, and then we can come back to what we're meant to look at today. So I'll just launch this file. And please, let's connect to that worksheet, add columns worksheet. I would be doing the same now. Let's give a prompt when we have connected to it and we are inside Power Query. All right, thank you, Abdul. Thank you, Sadiq. All right, so I'm here I'll just do new source. And I think I'm connecting to the one on the desktop. So let me come here and then I'll connect to this one. Open. It's opening another program. So let me say this one open. Okay, this is the one opened, and it should be the other one that I'm connecting to. And this one. File not found. I want to be the prep. This one. All right, so I'm connecting to add columns. Okay, so now I'm inside Power Query now. And remember the first thing we said we wanted to do. We want to add a new column that would be the new column would have values which would be combining what we have on our unit price column and the quantity column. Whenever we want to add new columns, remember that we mentioned something about some transformations that we did yesterday as well. When we spoke about the split and merge, I mentioned that whenever we want to split and we want that the splitting would retain the original column such that we have the original column and we have the split column separately, then what we need to do is to go to our add column tab to do our extraction from there. It's the same thing if you want to merge. And when we want to merge, we want to ensure that our merging would result into new columns, retaining the original columns as well. Then we need to do it from the Add Columns tab. So this standing rule is this. There are certain transformation steps or there are certain transformation buttons that you would see under the Transform tab. Such transformation buttons that we see under the Transform tab, and we also see them under the Add Column tab. For example, if I go to the Transform tab, you see that I have this number column group. I have statistics, I have standard, I have scientific, trig, and all of these. I have them here. If I go to the Add Column tab, I also have statistics, I have standard, scientific, trig, and all of these. If I come to the Transform tab, I have date and time column. I have this group here that says date, time, and duration. If I go to the Add Column tab, those buttons are available as well. Whenever we have buttons that are available on the Transform tab and the Add Column tab, the difference in the actions of the two buttons is if we use the button from the Add Column tab, it means that the result of our clicking on that button will result into a new column. So which means that we would have the original column and we would have an extra column which houses the result of that particular transformation. But if we click the same button under the Transform tab, the transformation would override the original column. So we will lose the original data that we have on that column and have a new set of data which would be the result of the transformation that we have performed. So that is the difference. So when it depends on what we want to achieve. So sometimes we know that what we want to achieve would need us to have a new column retaining the old column, then go to the Add column and perform that particular action. But if you want the column, you don't care about the old column, you don't care about the original data, you just want the transformation to happen, then you can do that transformation from the Transform tab. So in a case like this now we have seen that we want to have a new column that would have our actual data here, multiply these two columns, and as well retain these two columns, then we'll need to come to the Add Column tab. When we come to the Add Column tab, there are a couple of things we can do. But for this case, whenever we want to add a new column to our data set, which will be a result of we writing some functions, we want to perform a calculation to generate this column, then the button that we would use here is the custom column button. The custom column button. And if you see, as I hover my mouse on it, it says, let me see if you bring that out again. It brought it out earlier. I don't know why it didn't bring it out again. So if I hover my mouse on it, okay, let me see. If I don't zoom in, so it just tells us what it does, and it says that, okay, it has gone again. I don't know why this thing acts this way. So it just says that create a new column in this table based on a custom formula. So whenever we want to write a formula to generate a new column, then we come here to our custom column button. So everybody, let's click on that. So we are clicking on custom column button, and that's under the Add Column tab. So here we have a window opens up for us. And it is in this window that would define what calculation would result into the new column that we want. The first thing is we need to give our column a name. Of course, if you forget for whatever reason to change this name, your new column would come out as custom, which is something not posing any issue at all. You can go on to rename it after you have generated a column. It's nothing at all. So, but now we'll call this transaction amount. Call it transaction amount. That's what we'll call it. And now it says that we need to now write our custom column formula. What formula do we want to use to generate our new column? This is where we need to be careful with what we want to write. But being careful, what I just mean is that we need to know exactly how we want that column to be generated, And as well, we need to ensure that we are following the syntax of the M language. And if we are not sure of whether the syntax is correct or not, you get this a message at the bottom here that will tell you whether the syntax is wrong or not. So if I just come here and I say, if I put an ampersand here, it's giving me an indication here. But if I come here and I say, let me do something like, if I just pick customer name, now it says no syntax error have been detected. So when you have a message like this, it's a clear indication that, yeah, for the most part of it, you're on the right path and your formulas would not result into an error. So I'll come back. What do you want to do? Remember that what we want to do is to multiply individual values in the unit price column with the quantity column. So we don't need to specify specifically that we are picking each row of the table. So the way Power Query works is Power Query works on the entire table or on column. So whatever we are performing, whatever we are doing to a row on a column will translate down. It will happen all the way down. So once we pick a column, that it should multiply that column with another column. What we expect is that that same operation will be done row by row up till the last row that we have in our data set. So we want to multiply our unit price by quantity. So the first thing is under the available columns here, these are all the columns that we have on our data, on our table. So if you have 50 columns, you'll see all the column names here. So the first thing we need to do is we need our unit price multiplied by quantity. So we come to the unit price here under available column and just double click. Once we double click that, it gets into our formula area. Then we say multiply by, the same way we write multiply in, I don't know, in DAX, in Excel, that sign, I think it works also there. So we put this multiply sign, and now it says, this is not complete yet. What are you multiplying by? So we are multiplying by the quantity. So I'll double click the quantity. And immediately, so now I'm saying, pick whatever values you have in the unit price per row, multiply it by the same row under the quantities column. And then it says we don't have syntax errors. So at this point, if I click on OK, what we expect is that we'll get a new column called transaction amount. And inside of this column, we expect to have results that would be from the multiplication of the unit price and the quantity. So I'll go on and say, okay. And now if I go to the last column here, you see that we have a new column here, which has picked whatever, at this point, the unit price is 0.444 and the quantity is 1. So if you multiply these two, we expect to get the same answer. So let's go down to say, okay, here we have 0.984 multiplied by 2. So that should be 1.968. I guess this is correct. So this is what this has done, picking individual row values and from the unit price column, multiplying it by the quantities column, and then it generated a new column for us, which we called transaction amount. So this is a very basic thing we can do when we want to add columns. There might be some other things you want to do. But then I mentioned earlier that we use this route, which is we clicking on custom column whenever we want to generate a new column that will require us to write some formulas. At other times, what we may want to do may not be that we want to necessarily write a formula. We want to just have some conditions. Maybe we want to have, let's say, want to define a new location. Maybe all of these locations, for instance, maybe everything except for Austin is in USA. So every other thing, maybe we have them in Nigeria. And want to have a column that would say that when the city is Austin, then the country is USA. Otherwise, the country is Nigeria. As that sounds, it means we want to create a column that is conditional. So the column would premise on an existing column, look at the data that we have there, and then would say that when the data that we have in this column is this, when the value is this, then we are specifying a value for it. Otherwise, it should be something else. So let's quickly see that. So I'll come here now. If we want to do that, remember that we are adding a new column. So we need to be under the Add Column tab, and then we need to come to Conditional Column. So I'll come to Conditional Column, I'll click on that. And we would get a dialog box as we saw earlier. The Conditional Column dialog box, this is what we have. And so this one is saying that the same thing. What is the name of the column? So maybe you want to call this country. Country. And now it's saying that if column name, what column is the column that we are relying on? What column are we using to define our condition? So it is the city column. So I'll come here to select city. And now we are saying when city equals what? When city equals, let me say Austin. I hope I got the spelling correctly. When city equals Austin, then the country should be USA. We can add other things. Maybe we say when city equals, let me see what other state we have here. Let me pick Waco. So when city equals Waco, then we say that the country is Ghana, for instance. Otherwise, we have our else condition. The country is Nigeria. So we have this set, which means it will look at the city column for this country column that we are generating. Wherever it sees that the city column has a value of Austin, it will create a column for the country, and the value there would be for USA. That's on the row that the city is Austin. On the row that the city is Waco, the value there, the country would be Ghana. Any other row that is different from Austin and Waco, the country will be Nigeria. So that is a condition that we have written. So I'll come here and do OK. And if I try to move this to the side, just so it's with the city column. So now we can see that when the city is Austin, the country is USA. And when the city is Waco, country is Ghana. Every other thing is Nigeria. Immediately go back to Austin, we have USA. This another Austin, we have USA. Another Austin, we have USA, and like that. So that's how to create conditional columns. But let me take a pause very quickly. If you have done this, please confirm on the chat. Try to create a conditional column to create the calculated column that we had earlier to transaction amount. So please, when we have it, let's do confirm. So for the transaction column, remember, you're writing a function, you're writing a formula. So you need to go to custom column. You need to click on the custom column button to generate that. Whenever you're doing other than formula, maybe you are writing a condition, then you need a conditional column. All right, thank you, Sadiq. Okay, thank you, Bruce.
Hello, Mr. Hamid. So just a quick question. Is
Okay,
this
please.
case sensitive? Like the
Yes, it
conditional revoke?
is.
Okay.
Yes. So you need to write it the way it is, I suppose, yes. So otherwise, most likely it will result into the else statement if it doesn't match any of the conditions you have specified. Abdulsamad Olawale, have you tried it out too? Okay, so that is all right. Thanks for that. So that is how to add some columns. Another thing we may want to do is, like I mentioned, although this you may not necessarily need to do it because there is a better way to undo that in Power BI itself when we get to talking about visualization, modeling, and stuff. But assuming that there is a case that you want from this date, you want to extract what the month is, what the date is, what the what the month is, what the year is, some other things around that. If I come to this date here and I come to the transform tab, you see that I have the date button active. Excuse me. If I click on the customer name column, I have the dates, but all of these things, I can work with them. So they are grayed out. But if I click on the date column here now, I have the date button and I can work with the options that I have here. But notice something, if I look at the options for year, if I look at the options that I have for year, I can extract the year, the start of year and the end of year. So let's say I want to extract the year itself. I click on that. What we expect is that it should override my existing column. So which is what it did. Why? Because I clicked on the date button from the transform tab. So if I don't want this to happen, which means I want it to create another column for me, then I'll need to go to the add column tab. I'll select date, I'll come to year and I'll click on year. And immediately to throw a new column to the end, which I can do a right click and I can say move if I want it to be right to the side of the date column. So I'll say move to beginning. And now I can have it next to my date column. So that is how to extract from this, and then you want that to result into a new column. So a couple of things like that. Like I mentioned when we started, what we just need to do is to understand this interface for the most part of it. I know there might be a 10% possibility or 15%, 20% possibility that you may want to write some M code yourself. So if you would be writing some M code yourself, you may need to know a bit of M because we might be developing. So, but for the most part of reporting, you necessarily do not need to write M code yourself. What you just need to know is to see how you can get to some of these, look at the button that can assist with what you want to achieve, and most likely you will find something that will do just that for you. And again, if I come back here to add column and I do custom column, so if I come here and I type table, for instance, I'll get IntelliSense about all the table functions. And if I select this, I'll get, it gives me an idea of what it does, keeps the initial offset that alternates, blah, blah, blah. That's a way to get to know what the function is about. But usually, if you're working on table, you do table dot something. If you're working on columns, you do column dot something, and like that. But again, the other way is this. If you want to pull out the actual Power Query documentation, so I'll do, yes, I want to exit. We can stay here in Power Query, although you can go to Google as well to pull out the Power Query documentation, and it will tell you the documentation for the M language. But another thing we can do is if I come to new source like this, and I do blank query. So here, I can say that equal to shared. I suppose it's this. So if this is the code to pull that out, then it will pull out the entire Power Query documentation for us, and we'll see it's right here. So this is the Power Query documentation. Although in addition to what it will pull out from the Power Query documentation, it will pull out, it will add the already existing tables as attributes to this. So what we might just need to do here is to click on this button. So this returned as a list. So we can convert it into a table. So I'll click on this to convert it to a table, so that we can apply filters and we can go exactly to what we need to see. So just a moment. So now this is converted to a table. So if I come to this drop down here, and let's say I want to perform an operation that has to do with a table, so I can just filter down to tables here. So this is still loading. So once I filter down to tables, I guess this filtered, then this cell that has functions and stuff, you can click within any of the cells and you'll get a description of what a function is about. So this one that we clicked on returns a table listing the tables on the Spark and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you get to some functions and then it will even tell you what the syntax is like and stuff. So let me see if I'll get something like that for us. So if I come here to, let's say this one, and where's the date? Yes. So this one. So now dates dot end of quarter. So it tells you the syntax as well. And this might be a quick guide to how to begin to work with some of these functions. So I just showed us this because there might be a possibility that at some point you may have to write some M queries yourself, and then that would that this may be a good start point if you don't want to go to Google or Microsoft documentation to go and read up on the queries. The very last thing I want to show us here before we close is sometimes you may want to say what the entire code for your query is. if we are on any step, notice that we have that on the formula bar. So the formula bar shows us what power query wrote to generate that particular or to perform that particular action for us. But at other times, you may want to have your code somewhere. Maybe you have a particular data set that you have cleaned, and you know that that data set, you might work with it sometimes again in the future. So you want to save your code maybe on your notepad or somewhere. The way to get to the entire code for all of this transformation is to come to the View tab, and then you come to the Advanced Editor. So you come to the View tab and you come to the Advanced Editor. Once I click on Advanced Editor, I would see the entire queries, the entire code that Power Query wrote to get us to where we are at the moment. So this is the entire code here, everything here. And this code is very much reusable. So if, for instance, now, Abdul Qudus was the one that cleaned this add column table, and now Abdul Samad needs to work on the same table. What Abdul Qudus might want to do is to copy this code and share with Abdul Samad. So when he shares with Abdul Samad, the only thing Abdul Samad will need to do is to do a copy of this like this. I'll cancel, then I'll come to the Home tab, I'll come here, I'll do blank query. So when I do blank query like this, I can come to the View tab, I'll come to the Advanced Editor, then I'll paste this code here. So I'll need to highlight what is there, then I'll paste what I copied. So once I've pasted what I copied, the only thing Abdul Qudus would need to do is to come here to the source step. This is the source step. And the source step is that which is pulling where our data is sitting. So if you look at this, what we have on the source step is excel.workbook, because we have connected to an Excel file. And then it says file.content and the file part. So this file part is what Abdul Qudus would need to change so that this references his own system. If he doesn't change this, it will throw an error, because he's still looking at this file part and then he's expecting that he should see the actual file on this path, which he would not see, because this is looking at my system, looking at my OneDrive. So if Abdul Qudus will use this, he needs to just copy the file part for that actual file, and then he paste here. Once he pastes here, everything else should be fine, and he needs to just click on done. Once he clicks on done, the entire query should run, and you see that immediately we had a blank query here, but it has gone to the source, it has pulled out the data for me, and then it has performed all the entire step up to where we are. So sometimes you may want to share your query with people that probably you're working together or they are doing similar projects or assignment as you. You don't necessarily need them to go on to clean their own data again if you have done it. Just share the M code with them. They may need to change some parameters, maybe the source file and stuff. Once that is changed on the Advanced Editor, they are good and they can go on with some other things. I hope we understand up till this point. Any questions?
My question is, however, they are changing the location. They are changing the location, so the file will sit there, or will they have to have the Excel file?
Sorry, I didn't get that clearly, Abdul Samad.
Yeah, I missed the beginning part, but what I want to actually get is when they are sharing the code, they are not sharing the file initially. So by the time they are changing the, what's it called, the file location, they are changing it for you to save on the local system which the code was shared. Right?
Yeah, so they will need, the person that would use that file needs to have the file. So if I'm sharing the code with you now, Abdul Samad, you want to clean this same file. So obviously you need to have it. So because you know that the M code is looking at a particular structure of the file. If there is a change in the structure of the file, it will throw error. And by structure, what I mean is this particular file has date, it has customer name, it has segment, it has city. If I have a file that does not have this date, remember that from this date we extracted the year. So if the file that I want to use the M code on does not have this date column, it will throw error because it's expecting that one of the steps that we have on our apply step is working on that date. So it's expecting that that should be on that file. So once it doesn't see something that should be on the original file, it will throw some errors. So we need to, one is that the source, we might want to change the source and also ensure that the structure is the same as the original file that was cleaned. If those two are catered for, then you shouldn't have any issue. Everything should run.
Okay.
All right. So you're welcome. Okay, so now we'll go out of Power Query and I'll do close and apply. So everybody, let's get back to our Power BI now. So now we're back into Power BI. We are rounding up the data transformation phase. But there is something we need to quickly talk about. If I quickly get to my slide, we need to quickly talk about something. Yes, data query types. When we talk about data query types, there are typically two types of data queries. And by data query, what we're saying is that in what way did your data get into Power BI? And when we talk about the ways via which data gets into Power BI, there are typically two ways to it. One is to import, the other one is direct query. We need to understand this clearly and understand a bit about their implications. The very first thing is when we talk about import, what import means is that Power BI establishes a connection to our data source and Power BI pulls in our data source. So if I come to the data view here and I click on any of the column here, you will see that we have a copy of this data on the Power BI file, which means that after Power BI established a connection to our Excel workbook, it copied in the data and it created a snapshot of the data inside of itself. So we have a snapshot of our data, our raw data inside the Power BI file. What we have done with this connection is what is called import. And this is what would happen whenever we are connecting to a flat file. Whatever flat file we are connecting to, we would get to have a copy of that data within Power BI. The other way is what is called the direct query. Direct query means that we don't want to pull in our data from the database. But what we are doing is that we want to establish a direct connection to the database and be able to run queries such that whenever we need data to be pulled or data to be used from the database, Power BI establishes a connection to the database, but does not create a sample of that data in the Power BI file. So the difference between import and direct query is in import, your data comes into Power BI. Power BI creates a copy of your data in itself. Direct query is just a link that Power BI will create. The link would speak to the data source, but the actual data would not come into the Power BI file. Before I begin to talk about the implications of the two, let me just quickly show us something. So when we talk about direct query, it's typically peculiar to databases, your relational databases. So let's assume that I have my data sitting in SQL Server. So I want to connect to SQL Server. If I want to connect to SQL Server, sorry, sometimes I may need to get to my SSMS. For most times, I don't always remember what the server name is. So let me just launch that. But while that is coming up, you see now that we want to connect to SQL Server, it's asking for the server name, We can provide the database name optional, and we have the data connectivity mode. So if I select import, what I'm doing is that I want to pull in the data. I want to create a copy of whatever tables I'm connecting to in my SQL server. And I want to create that copy inside of Power BI. But for direct query, what it means is that I want to establish a connection to the database, to the exact tables that I need on the database, but I don't want to have a copy of the data in my Power BI file. So that's the difference between the two. One would create a copy of the actual data. The other one would not create a copy, but rather it creates a link to the actual data. Why is this not coming up? I know it should be D Brown something something. Okay. So why this is coming up? From the scenarios that I painted now, one will pull in the data, would create a copy. The other one will not create a copy. What do we think are some of the implications? One, let's talk about the file size. Which one will have a larger file size, a larger Power BI file size? Which one? Import or direct query? Which one do we think? So I have my server name. I'll paste it here. Why is it pasting? This is D Brown 001 SQL Express. Yeah. So why do we think, which one do we think would have a larger file size?
I guess it's import.
Perfect. Import would have a larger file size. But another thing we need to know of is this. Just like Excel has a row limit, 1 million plus. That's what Excel would take by default, except you want to extend the possibility with your Power Pivot. Power BI also has a limit as at now. Of course, Power BI is continuously evolving, so it's possible that tomorrow the limit might be something else. But as at now, the limit for the file size, the data size that you can import into Power BI is 1 gigabyte of data. So when you have a data set that's the volume of that data, the size is 1 gigabyte, that's the maximum that you can import into Power BI. So which means that whenever you have a data size that is more than a gig of data, you don't have the option. The only thing you can do is to do direct query. So with file size, yes, if your data is very large, you have millions of rows of data, it may not be a good option for you to import that data into Power BI. You should do a direct query. That's on the file size. The other thing is on the refresh time. Which one do we think would refresh quickly? When you import or when you do direct query?
Direct query.
Okay, somebody said direct query. Which one do we think? Import or direct query? And I want us to look at it in two ways. I'm talking about the refresh time for the report, and I'm talking about when we want real-time data. So let's not confuse the two. If we want real-time data, which one do we think would give us real-time data?
Import.
Direct query, import. Which one should I pick?
I think direct query.
Direct query. Direct query will give us a more real-time data because at every point, see this chart that we have here, this card that we have here. If we want this card to refresh, at every time that this card is refreshing, it's picking back to the database. It's getting the data from the database directly. So if within that time, we have new data set entered, new records entered into our database, this will pick the new records. But for when we import, we have a snapshot of that in Power BI. When we want to refresh, it will be in levels. The first refresh will be that it will speak to This card will speak to the data that's already in Power BI. Then after then, it will now go to the database. So it's in levels for it, which means that for direct query, it's speaking directly to the database. There is no branching first. But for imports, it's looking at the data it already has, and then going further to now establish reconnection to the database to now pick that. So for real-time data, direct query is better. But for data refresh, imports is better in the sense that because the data is sitting within your Power BI file, it's quicker, it's in its own environment. So it sees that data and just refreshes it very quickly and then gets you what you want. Again, another reason why some organizations would want to use direct query instead of import is because of security. If I have my data imported into Power BI and I share my Power BI file, anybody that has a file, yes, they would see whatever data I have imported. This Power BI file, if I share it with anybody, maybe I will someone that could use anybody, you would see the data here. If I close this, you come to the data view. As soon as you have this file, you will see the actual data. But when we do direct query, you will not see the data here. The only thing you'll be seeing is the visual that you have here. So which the visual does not translate to the actual data. The visual might be on an eye level, whereas the data that we have here will be very granular. So you can see that Abdul brought in this amount, Abdul brought in this amount, Olawale did this. You see those granular data. You might not want people to see that, which is another reason why organizations would say that they want to use direct query. But essentially, we need to know that for flat files, Excel, CSV, SharePoint, list, and all of those, you don't have option for direct query. You can only import. But when you're working with relational databases, your SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, you have option there for direct query. So let's connect now. We'll connect to our SQL Server, and then we'll quickly look at, so this is the server name. Then let's import first. So I'll leave it at import, then I'll click on OK. Okay, so this has established connection to my management studio. So I can come here to select whatever table. Let me see. Maybe I want this person table. Maybe I want this. Then I'll click on load. So while this is coming up, I want to open a fresh Power BI file. Okay, so I guess this is in already. Okay, so I want this to be launching on the background. So I have a new table here. If I come to my data view and I come to the person.person table, sorry, because I'm launching another Power BI file, and Power BI has some crazy ways of using the system resources. and again Zoom. So we are using two heavy applications. So I would close this. And I have a couple of files opened as well. Yeah. So let me come back to this file. So now we have a person.person table here. Person.person table. So this is coming from our database. It has 19,000 rows. Fine. Because we imported, if I hover my mouse on it, you see, because if I come here, you see, because the storage mode is import, that's why we can see the entire data within our Power BI file. So it brought in a sample of the data. So if I come to this new file here, and I do SQL Server here, and this is my server name, I want to change this to direct query. And of course, some of us will write some SQL, right? Do you have people that write SQL here? Anybody?
Yes.
Okay, so you can write your SQL queries here as well. You select whatever table you want to select, define your where clause and everything. You can write it here so that even right from the database, you have it filtered down to the exact thing that you need. So now we have selected direct query, and then I'll go on to click on OK. Okay, so I have this here. So let's go on to select whatever table we are selecting again. Select the person table, and I'll click on load. All right, so very quickly, we would observe something. If I come to the previous file, we have three buttons here. We have the report view, we have the data view, and we have the model. If I come to this new file, what do we observe? We have two buttons here. So we only have the reports and we have the model. So we can't even see the data. We can't see the actual data that we have there. So which is one thing that is peculiar to direct query, because Power BI is not pulling in, it's not creating a copy of the data. What it has only done is to establish a connection to that particular source. And whenever we need to render a report, so we want to render a report, it will go on to speak to the data source before it can render whatever our report is. So if I put this here, for instance, at every instance, it will return back, to speak back to the database before it will give us the result. You see, this is still loading. So it's going back to the database to pick the values and then return the value. So it just depends on the scenario and some of the implications that we mentioned. If you're working with relational databases, you have option of importing or doing direct query. But if it's not a relational database, you're connected to the web, you're connected to flat files, you only have the option to import. So that's how this runs. But we need to understand the scenarios so that for some scenarios, if you're doing direct query, we know why we're doing direct query and we understand some of the implications of doing direct query as such. Any question on this before we go on, please? Okay, I guess we don't have questions. All right, so this will be the end of our data transformation side of things. So now, if we remember from our very first class, I mentioned that for most things that we are doing in Power BI, if we remember, we have the prepare stage, then we have the model, then we have the analyze, visualize, and manage. Those were the tasks that we listed as the tasks for a data analyst. So now we have prepare. We are done with preparing. And preparing has to do with connecting and as well doing transformation. So all of those are from the things that we do when we prepare our data. So let's now go to model. Why do we model our data? What is the reason for modeling? When we talk about data modeling, there are a couple of things we are doing. Essentially, what would need us to model data? I want to simplify it into two. The first thing is that, let's assume we are running a banking business. If you download a transaction file from a bank, let me get to Excel. If I open a new Excel very quickly, I need to close some things so that I can save some resource on the system. Close. So if I come here now, let's assume that this is a record of transactions. This is a record of transactions. So I have, you can have serial number, you can have account number, you can have transaction dates, you can have recipient account number, we can have recipient account number, we can have transaction amount, and like that. These are the details that most likely would have on a particular transaction. Sorry. So these are the files that, these are the kinds of fields that would have on a particular transaction file. But when we want to create our reports, it could be that the reports that we want to create, we want it to have, or let me ask this question. If we create a report with this data here, serial number, account number, transaction date, recipient account number, transaction amount, and we have a report that shows something like this. We have account number 125, this, blah, blah, blah. And then the transaction amount was this amount, something like this. Then we have an account number, blah, and the transaction amount was this. Then we have an account number, something like this, and the transaction amount was something like this. So for all of these, we have this. These are the account numbers, and these were the aggregated transaction numbers. Would this make sense as a report? So we are presenting this say to the management, and we are saying that account number 1254820, in the last 1 month, the total transaction was 458,000. Account number 2587462, the total transaction was 985 million. Would that make sense?
No.
Why?
Because it's not well detailed.
Because it's not well detailed. What are some of the details that we might need?
Like maybe probably maybe showing date of those transactions and then the amounts transacted that
Yes, we have the amount.
resulted to this. This is the total amount, right?
Yeah.
As in maybe having those date of transactions with amount transacted. Date.
Okay, I got those.
That resulted to this, yes.
To this. Okay, so we want to see the details, the breakdown.
Yes.
Okay. Beyond those, having account numbers like this, reporting on account numbers may not make any sense, because everybody is wondering who has account number 1254820. Do we agree? Who has account number 2587462? Do we agree? That might be something that people want to know. So because somebody is behind these account numbers, we would not reward 2587462. We are rewarding an individual that is behind it. So what normally would happen is that you would have another table that they probably would call customer table. They will call customer table like this. And then here they would have account number. They would have account holder's name. They would have location. They may have place of birth. They may have date of birth. They may have BVN. They may have next of kin, and all of these details. This would have detail, every single detail of the customer would be on this table. And this table might run into hundreds of thousands of rows or thereabout, depending on the number of customers they have. And if we have a table like this that can provide us with the account holder's name, which we would need on our reports, how then can we create a single report that would feed from, that would now have an extra column here? So we now have an extra column here that would say that the account holder for this is Mohsin, this one is Sidowu, this one is Samad, and like that. How can we create a report like this? Remember that your account ID and the transaction amounts, both of them are coming from this table here. Now we need another subset of details that would come from another table. Whenever we have a situation like this, that we need to create a single report that would be speaking to a couple of tables, then what we need to do is what is called data modeling. So data modeling is just a technique to ensure that we have our different data sources speak to one another, such that we would now be able to create a single report on top of all of the tables that we have. So a single report as this will now be feeding from this records of transaction table, be feeding from customers table. Do we understand this slightly? If it's not clear, please let me know. The class is silent. Are we confused?
Yes, a bit.
Okay. All right. So let me clear our confusion a bit more. Let me see if I can get a file. Just hold on, everybody. I should have dimension. Dimension tables, this, let me see, should be this. Choice this, let me say, superstore plus dimension. Okay, so let me use this to illustrate that. I have a table here, and I will do a quick exercise on this. So let me share this file with you. I just hope I know the exact location of this file. Let me see. Desktop on this PC, downloads, then Superstore. Okay, suppose this is it. Open. So please, let's download the file as soon as we have it. All right, thank you. Please have it opened. All right, so if you're looking at the orders worksheet, if you're looking at the orders worksheet, we want to create a report that would tell us how much individual sales manager have brought into the business. So you know that each of these transactions, they happened via a particular sales rep, and a sales rep as a sales manager. So we want to create a report that would aggregate the entire amount that individual sales manager has brought into the business. Everybody look at the orders worksheet. Do we have answer to that report on that worksheet? Would we be able to create it from the details we have on that worksheet?
So, sorry, please, I didn't get the question.
Okay, so the question is, we have a requirement to create a report that would aggregate this sales amount. We have a sales column that would aggregate the sales amount from the different sales managers.
Hello.
Yes, please.
I think some columns are missing, so that might not be possible. Yes, so
like what column, please?
Like the sales managers column.
Okay, so we don't have the sales managers column, but we have the sales column, right?
Yes.
Okay, Because we don't have the sales manager's column, it means that this orders worksheet would not answer that question. But let's look at the other worksheet. Is there anywhere that we can find our sales manager?
Sales team worksheet.
Sales team worksheet, excellent.
Yeah.
Because we have that details on the sales team worksheet, then what we need to do, normally what people would have done is to come to the sales team worksheet. If we want to pull out the sales team manager from here and put it on the orders worksheet, how would we do that normally in Excel? Who is the Excel guru in this class? Olawale Abdul Samad, Hassan, Sadiq, Abdul Kudus. Who is the Excel guru?
I don't know about that.
No, Abdul Samad, you are trying to be humble. You use Excel very well, don't you?
Yes, I do, but I'm not really good with the formulas for Excel.
Okay, so but if you have a situation like this, that you want to pull in sales team manager from this worksheet onto your orders worksheet. Anyone has an idea how we can do that in Excel?
Aside for copy and paste, I don't know.
Okay, but if we copy and paste here, say that we have how many? We have just 14 sales team manager. If I come here to where I have my sales rep, sorry, shift cell to the right. No, that's not what I want to do. So let me insert a column first. Ignore what I've copied, I beg. Yeah, so if I come here now, if I come back to this worksheet and I copy, and I come here and I paste, I'm sure this is not what we want to do.
Yes.
It is not. So we need to dynamically pick, since we have sales rep on this worksheet. So when the sales rep is organic, the sales team manager is organic. When the sales rep is Steve, sales team manager is Tracy. So we need that to be dynamic such that whenever it's looking at organic, it knows that sales team manager is organic. Once the value changes to something else, the organic here is so much. Once the value changes to something else, we want it to also pick whatever the sales team manager is at that point. So if you want to address this in Excel, so what we'll do is we can come here, I'll call this sales team manager, and then I can do a VLOOKUP. So I'll say VLOOKUP, look up this sales rep. I'll put a comma, then come and look it up on this particular worksheet, on this table. So I will lock this table, then I'll put a comma, and then what column am I returning? So I'm returning the sales team manager. So you should look up the sales rep and return the corresponding sales team manager. And the sales team manager is a third column, so I'll put 3, and then I want to do an exact match. So this is just a bit of Excel here. So we see that immediately for organic, it's returned organic. So if I double click my fill and do, it will fill it down entirely. So let me apply filters here. And if I change it from, I don't want to see organic, so I want to see Abigail, Alan Ray, and Anne. If I click on OK, see that immediately for Abigail Thompson, the sales team manager is Tracy. So let's confirm. I'll come to this here. Where is Abigail? This Abigail Thompson, sales team manager is Tracy. If I look at another one, this is Alan Ray, sales team manager is James. So we have Alan Ray, sales team manager is James. So that's what we typically would do in Excel to salvage that situation, to bring in our sales team manager. And now we can create a report of sales team manager by the aggregated amount. We can create that report now. but this is too much work. What we would do instead is to find a way via which what we have on the others worksheet can speak to this guy here. And that what would have eventually will be something like this. So I'll copy out these headers, Control C, and I'll come here. I'll quickly put the headers here. So these are the headers from the others worksheet. And for the sales team worksheets, these the headers. So I want to do this. So this is what we have. We have the headers here and we have the headers here. So what we need to do, assume that we don't have sales team manager here. So we only added that. So what we would do normally is this. We need to just find a way for this table to speak with this table. That's all we need to do. So instead of pulling in a whole column from here and pushing it here and have our data size increase significantly, because as soon as we have this column on the sales team, this is just 14 rows. As soon as we have it on the others worksheet, how many rows will it become? We have 821 rows. That is not something you would want to do because that will significantly impact your file size. And as your file size gets to become bigger, your Power BI file will become bigger as well, and it will impact on the refresh and some other things. The optimization of the model as well. So now, what we'll do instead is, how can we establish a connection between this table and this table here? We want them to be able to speak to one another. In order to do that, remember that when we wanted to do our VLOOKUP, we used something that was common on the two table. What was that thing? Anybody figured out?
Sales reps and sales team manager.
Yes, but we use sales rep because sales rep is on the others table and sales rep is on the sales team table, correct?
Yes.
That was why we used as the lookup value, that it should look for sales rep on this table and return the corresponding sales team manager. So that was only possible because we have sales rep on this table as well. So because we have something that is common between these two tables, so potentially there is a way these two tables can talk to one another, which would be via our sales reps column. Let me say this. So which will be from the sales reps column to the sales reps column. So once we are able to establish a communication between these two tables via these two guys, then we are sure that the issue is resolved, because instead of pulling in our sales team manager into this table, this would open doors for that communication. And once this opens door for the communication, we would be able to access the sales team manager, just like we were able to do with our VLOOKUP formula, because we have our sales rep on this table, we have it on the other table. That was why we were able to pull in this guy. So instead of pulling it in, let's just leave it there, allow the tables to talk to one another, and we just go on to create our report straight. Do we understand what I've explained up till this point?
Sorry, I missed the last part.
Okay, so what I said was, instead of having to pull in the sales team manager into our other table, the way we did here, we need to just establish a communication between the two tables. And so we don't necessarily need to pull in whatever column from the other table. Once they're able to speak to one another like this, sales rep is speaking to sales rep here, we can access any other thing here. We have the key already. This key would open the door on this table. And so we can access the sales team, we can access the sales team manager.
Okay, I got that.
Okay, Abdul, do you have a question or you are confused?
No. It just seems more like the SQL data query table.
Correct. So on SQL, excellent. You have your actual table and you have related tables. Your related tables are only related to the parent tables because of some keys. So you have a primary key and a foreign key. The same thing is happening here. The essence of those keys is to ensure that you are able to pull in values from one or the other table so they can speak to one another. That's the essence of those keys. So if those keys are not there, which means that you don't have access to the other tables, then you would not be able to pull in data from any other table, and you will not be able to join your tables together. The reason why you are able to establish those joins, when you want to do a join in SQL, you have the on side of the things. Am I correct? You are doing an inner join, for instance, you say inner join this table on what? So it is on that part of that, on the on clause, that is where you go on to specify that, okay, it is the employee ID from the sales table equal to the employee ID from the customers table, for instance. So that place that you are specifying that the column, the primary column equal to the foreign column, that is where that you have the key. And it is because those two tables, they are actually related by that column. That column is what is opening the door for that relationship. So the same thing is happening here. We have a column on a table. We have a column, the same column on another table. Because we have the same column on the two sides of our table, we would be able to establish a relationship between these two tables. And then we'll now talk about the issue of the foreign keys and the primary key and stuff. But I want us to understand first the reason why we need to establish that relationship. And it's because so that we can have access to the data on the other column, on the other table. But before that can happen, we need to first ensure that we have a column that is common on both sides, which in this case is the sales reps column. Is it clear to us now?
Yeah, it's very clear.
Yes.
All right. What we have just explained, the process of ensuring that our tables speak to one another, that is the concept of data modeling. And the reason why we would always need to model our data is a scenario like this. We have some data on a particular table. We have some other data on another table, and we need these two tables to speak to one another. When we have a situation like that, we would need to model our data. Number one reason. Please give me 2 minutes, please. All right, sorry about that. So the other reason why we would want to also model our data is because of the fact that sometimes when you download some transaction file or you download data from a system or somebody provides you with a data set, you could have a data that has, let's say you have data that has maybe about 40 rows. You have data that has about 40 columns rather. like this. What normally happens is if you have a data that is as large as this, you would want to break down that table, because if you have a data that has 40 columns and say you have like 500,000 rows, potentially you have about 20, how many is that? You have about 20 million records potentially, because for each of 20 million cells rather, because for each of these now, the number of rows multiplied by the number of columns, that seems very large already. And if you look at a situation like this column that we have here that we brought in, sales team managers column, we have 821 rows. And the actual data, the unique data there is just 14. So we have a lot of duplicated records here because we pulled it in. And that's a reason why sometimes we want to break down the table such that we don't eventually have a very large file size like this, but we have it very small, and then we have it in bits in different. So we have a table for orders, we have a table for location. So let me use this example here. So the orders column, that's what we have pulled out. We have our location ID up to this point, this one. So let me add it here. Just add a few rows here. What's wrong with this thing? So this, what's happening to this system? Something is not happening here. So this overlap, okay, good. Something else is wrong. Okay, so what I want to do is this. Let me just so I have location here, I have city here, I have state here, postal code, and region. So this is what I have. And this one like this. And then for my customers, so I have customers, this, and this. So this one. And then for products, I have this as well. And for my sales team, okay, I think I already have that. So my sales team, I have this here. Okay, so I have this here. Sales team. Control-C, Control-V. All right, so this is what we would have initially before this table was broken down. We have 27 columns, and for each of those columns would have like 827 rows that we saw. One typical thing with this is that the data size would be very large because we would have so many duplicates in our data. So another reason why, like I mentioned, that we want to model our data is to break this entire table off into the smaller tables that we have here. We break it off into the smaller tables that we have here. And when we do that, we would have significantly reduced the size of our file. So I want to show us some of these, the steps to do this very quickly. And so that from the next class, we'll just stem it up from here. When we want to model our data, let me see if I can share. There should be a file that we can use for this. So let me just see. Where's the chart? Downloads superstore data. I guess it's this one. All right, so everybody, let's open the file that I have on the chart. Please confirm where you have it opened. So anybody else has it? I see 2 people. Okay. All right. So if you look at this file, here we have 23 columns. We have 9,995 rows. This file, we want to now break it down into smaller chunks so that we can significantly reduce the file size. Hopefully, we are able to substantiate that as well. So let's do something. I'll come to the steps. We have 5 steps when it comes to modeling our data. And whenever we model our data, like I mentioned, what we are trying to do is to ensure that our different tables, they speak to one another like this. So we have a sales table. One is to speak to the customers table. Want the sales table to speak to the products table so that we can report by the product name, the brand, and the color. Want the sales table to speak to the date table so we can report by month, by day of week and stuff. That's what we will have to, that we would get to eventually. But when we want to build a data model, we have some steps. The very first step is to identify all the reporting fields. What are the reporting fields? They are the columns we have in our data. So everybody, let's open a new worksheet on our data, on our workbook. So copy the headers from this, Control C to copy. And if you come to the new worksheet you have opened, you can press Alt ESVE, and that would paste transpose. Oh, sorry about that, Molawali. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you catch up with the recordings. So please confirm when you have it pasted rather. So this is step 1. You highlight all the reporting fields.
So the command you use for this to use the column as rows.
Yes, so Alt E S V E.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So everybody has it? Do we have all the column names pasted on a new worksheet?
Sorry, Mr. Hamid, I didn't get this Alt ESVE part.
Okay, you need to copy first. I liked the headers copy.
Okay.
Control C. Then you come to where you want to paste. Then just press Alt ESVE and hit enter.
Okay.
Did it work for you?
I didn't
Not
work.
working?
No.
It didn't work. Please share your screen. Let me see what you have. Or are you on Mac?
No, I'm on Windows.
Windows, okay. Share your screen, let me see. Okay. Go to the others worksheets. Have you copied?
Yes.
Okay, yes, then come to the worksheet. Just press none. You don't need to make the cell active.
Okay.
Yeah, so just press Alt.
Okay.
E S no.
Are we holding it down or pressing one after?
No, just pressing one after the other would work. Most likely what you copied has gone now. So go back to what you copied. Yeah, so you need to just Control C again. Then come here. Don't highlight anything. Just do Alt as it is now.
So I have to highlight this.
Don't worry. Just leave it. Just leave it. Just do Alt.
Alt. Sure.
E
E
S V E. Enter. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So that is step number 1. We need to identify all the reporting fields. Step number 2 is that we need to now categorize the field into report lines and values. What does this mean? We want to categorize into report lines and values. We need to look at all the report fields now and figure out which of these columns, all the fields that we have here, they represent individual columns. Which of these columns can we perform aggregations on? So everybody look at it. Which of these columns can we perform aggregations on? Can we perform calculations on?
Coffee.
Which of the columns?
Profit.
Discount profit.
Profit. Sales profit. Which other one?
Discount.
Discount and what?
Quantity.
Quantity. Perfect. So all these four that we can perform aggregations on, put a V in front of them. They are values. Any other one aside from these guys that we can perform aggregations on, put R. So they are report lines. The other ones that we can perform aggregations on, they are the values. That's step number 2. Has everyone done that?
Yes.
All right. Step number 3. Step number 3 says that we need to now group the report lines. Those that we mentioned to be R, we will now group them as they are related to one another. So let's look at this. Which ones are related? I'll give us an example. Customer ID is related to customer name, related to the customer segment. So because it is a customer ID that would have a name, and that customer actually belongs to a customer segment. So we have put them together into different segments. So we have customers that they trade on furnitures. We have customers that they trade on maybe office supplies and the likes of those. So these 3, they are speaking to our customers, so they are related. So I'll call them maybe D1. So which other things here are related?
Order ID, order dates, shipping dates, and shipping mode.
Okay. Why do we think ship mode is related to them?
Well, because it's more like an order, a code of order. So.
Okay. Ship mode. Anybody else? What do we think? What do we think?
Like sales rep, sales team manager.
Sales rep, sales team manager. Perfect. Those are related. Those are all speaking to the team involved.
It's postal code region.
I didn't hear that well.
City, state, postal code region.
City, state, postal code, region. How about location ID?
Yes, that should be included also.
Yes. So all of these, they are speaking to location. So that's the 3rd dimension that we have.
Product ID, category, subcategory, and product name.
Product ID, product category, subcategory, and product name. Excellent. Those are speaking to all our products. So what do we have left? So we have these guys left. Order ID, order date, ship date, and the ship mode. Are they all related? Can they form a single category?
Yes.
Are we sure? How is order ID related to order date, for instance?
The date was ordered, and the order ID is the unique ID for that particular order.
Mm-hmm.
The ship date is the date the order will be shipped out.
Mm-hmm.
Then the ship mode is talking about how the order will be shipped out.
Perfect. So, but the challenge with this is that if we say specifically that our order ID is related to the order date, it means that whenever, let me use this example now. If I come here to the product side of things, this four guys here. If I come here to the product ID, once I pick a product ID, if I say they are related, I should be able to know the product category. I should be able to know the subcategory. I should be able to know the product's name. Do we agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, because just like the location, we are in Nigeria now. If somebody tells us that he is in Ikeja, would we be able to know the state that the person is in? Someone says he's at Ikeja now. Would we be able to know the state that the person is in?
Yes.
Yes, because we already know that Ikeja has relationship to the state. So once we know the location, we can know the state. But for these guys, if we know the order ID, let's say the order ID is ABC123. That's the order ID. From this order ID, would we be able to say specifically what the date is? Would we be able to?
Yeah, I didn't get that.
So I'm asking, we have an order ID.
Okay.
Can we, from the order ID, say what the order date is?
Yes.
Are we sure? So when we see an order ID, we can say, oh, this order was made in 2014, January 10.
Yes. Yes, okay.
Okay. The same thing for the ship mode. Can we get to know how it was shipped?
Yes.
Okay.
Because
Go on, please.
the ship mode is actually talking about the order that was made.
Yes, because the ship mode is talking about the order that was made. But one thing we need to consider is this. If you're talking about the sales rep, for instance, if Abdul Samad is a sales rep, immediately somebody hears Abdul Samad, he already knows the sales team that Abdul Samad belongs to. And once we know the sales team that Abdul Samad belongs to, we will know who the sales manager for Abdul Samad is. That kind of relationship needs to exist here. So if somebody says the order is ABC124, we know that any order that is ABC124 must have an order date of 24th January 1992 and must have a ship date of this so date and must have a ship mode of this so ship mode. Will that exist between these four?
Yes.
If we say yes to this, then it means that our order ID is not meant to be unique. Because if our order ID is unique, it means we would not be able to, from the order ID, say what the order date would be. The only way this can work is for our order ID to be specific to some product, to say that when the order ID is ABC124, then we know that the product is cap. And because the order ID is ABC124, any product that has this order ID must be shipped on this date. And any product that has this order ID must have a ship mode of first class. That's what this means. Is that the situation? It's getting confusing, I know. Not to worry. So this one now, these guys that we have here, they are typically not related. The reason why they are not related is the kind of relationship that we have for these ones. When we know Abdul Samad's account number, if you go to the bank, what the banker would ask you for is your account number. Once they know your account number, they will know your account name. Is that not it?
Yes, yes.
And once they know your name, they will know the segment you belong to. Maybe you are a current account holder, you are a savings account holder, whatever account you hold with them. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, that's correct.
Yeah. But if they look at a particular, if you are there to report on a particular transaction, for instance, the transaction you are reporting on, you give them an ID. From the ID that you provide them with, they may not necessarily know when that transaction held, except they look at their database. They may not also necessarily know when you left the bank on that day. They may not also necessarily know from that transaction ID how or when or how you transacted, except they look at their database. But something like your customer account number is statutory. For instance, if you are using GT Bank, maybe GT Bank, for instance, if an account number starts with 0, they already know that this is a savings account. They don't need to look at their database. If an account number starts with 2, they already know that this is a current account, for instance. They don't need to look at their database because these are statutory. So they already have established a sort of a relationship for this thing on their own databases. I don't know if we are getting this a bit.
Yes, yes, I am.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the kind of relationship, or that's the kind of thing we'll need to see in some fields before we would say that they are related. If we know a postal code, from that postal code, we can guess what the city is. If it's a postal code we are familiar with, let's say, for instance, now, the school I went to, the postal code was PMB 4000. If anybody tells me PMB 4000, I know there shouldn't be 2 postal codes or 2 postal addresses in Nigeria that would have that postal code. So anybody that says PMB 4000 is where they shipped that to, I know that it is my school. So there is a direct relationship to that particular location, and that's the kind of thing that we need. So these guys that we can see here, they are not really related, so they are different dimensions on their own. So we say that we can have this to be, let's say this is D5, D6, D7, and D8. This one would have. So this is step number 3. Let me say this is 9:04 by our time. Should we take a pause here and complete this in the next class?
I think the last step, which is sales quantity discount profit.
Yes.
Should also be in the same.
So what we on step number 3, remember that we are grouping our report lines. So we are grouping the report lines, which is those things that we labeled are. So on step number 3, we are ignoring the V's. Do we get? The V's are the value lines, the values. Every other thing that is not a value is a report line, which is a R. So the R's are the ones that we are putting into different hierarchies.
Okay.
Do we get that?
Yes.
Do we get that?
Yes.
Yes.
So should we take a pause here? So we wrap this up in the next class. So because after we are done now completing the step, then we'll now go on to now establish how this will look in our Power BI again. So we might still need about 30 minutes or thereabout to complete this. So let's sorry.
I want to ask, are you thinking we'll continue now?
Because I actually do have something else for this time. That was why I had it scheduled for 7 a.m.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Okay, then next class is fine then.
Yes, so please, what I would want us to do for me is let's save this Excel file so that we just pick it up from there in the next class, inshallah. I hope did we get that, please, everybody?
Yes,
Yes,
I did.
yes.
Okay. All right. So thanks a lot, everybody. Please, let's make our time to watch this again so that hopefully if there are some gray areas, we'll have one of those cleared before our next meeting, please.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for our time and patience.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.